Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on inspiresmall.biz/Indy's Trusted Servant. What's Indy's Trusted Servant? Well, that's me, Danny O'Malia. I'm Indy's Trusted Servant. I do customer service training and keynote speaking. In either case, it's all about the culture of the organization. Why are Chick-fil-A and Nordstrom, and up until very recently, maybe Southwest Airlines, better than everybody else in the industry? They had great cultures. They kept them as they grew. Many places never start off with a good culture. Many places lose the culture as they grow or get sold or whatever. And I learned all of that from the hand of the master, my late father, Joe O'Malia, back in the O'Malia Food Market days. And even before that, in the mid-50s, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, he had a little grocery store in Broad Ripple where the Vagabond bar is now. It had one cash register and 5 or 6 employees, and one of them was a little kid. And he lost that store, and 10 years later, he came back and successfully launched O'Malia Food Markets with 9 stores and 950 employees. And one of the things I learned was never, ever, ever give up. If you're interested in my customer service keynoting or training, give me a call at 317-413-9062. What's the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on inspiresmall.biz? Well, I like to describe it as lively local small biz and community talk where you can feel the pulse of Indy. And today my guest is new to Indy with a charity that's new to Indy. It's Catherine Ord with Vagabond Missions, and I've met Catherine through the Catholic Business Exchange. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to share a little bit about Vagabond Missions and what we're doing here in Indianapolis.
Well, we're excited to do that, but first tell the viewers about yourself, where you come from, what you studied in school, how you ended up here, and so forth.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Southern California. I grew up in Orange County. And we got to this point where life in California was really expensive, and we were just trying to
see,
how does this work? Me and my husband are both in full-time ministry, and my mom actually gave me a call saying that my stepdad was going to go into early retirement, and that meant that they might leave California. And all of a sudden, the idea of leaving became a possibility. I have 3 small children, and I just didn't want to leave family, but when my mom was open to that move.
Did your mom move to Indiana?
She did. She
wow.
came with
okay.
us. Yeah,
okay.
So we decided we were going to move together, and we started a search and kind of thought we would end up close to California, the normal route of Arizona or Colorado, but it wasn't a good fit for one reason or another.
Well, but before I ask you how you picked Indiana and Indianapolis, tell us a little bit more about your background and where you went to school and what you studied.
Okay, yeah. So I studied at Loyola Marymount University in
the
Los
Lions.
Angeles. Yeah, go Lions. Yes. So I have my undergrad in psychology and theology, and I got a master's degree in pastoral theology.
So you knew you were going to be doing this kind of stuff all along.
I always felt a call to work with young people, and I thought maybe in social work or maybe counseling.
Wow.
My faith has always been really central, so I kind of studied theology more as a hobby, and then the Lord and the Holy Spirit just opened up doors where I was able to do it professionally. Okay,
so we're both graduates of Jesuit universities, Loyola Marymount, Xavier University, so we got that in common.
Yeah.
So, okay, now we got your background pretty solid. How old are your kids now?
So my oldest, Alaska, is 10. My middle is Harrison, and he is 8. And then the youngest is 5, and his name is Anderson. So 1 girl, 2 boys.
Okay, okay. So how did you all pick Indiana?
Yeah, so it was a lot of Google searching of making sure we had good schools, good hospitals. We wanted it to be culturally diverse. My husband had read an article by John Green about living in Indianapolis, and he's like, oh, that sounds like something we could do. But we all were like, that's so far away, we're never gonna go that way. And we took a visit here last January and just really felt at peace.
Was it you and your husband only, or was it your mom and
my stepdad?
And your stepdad
so all
too?
4 of us came, and we drove around neighborhoods, and then I started kind of looking for different jobs, contacting the diocese, contacting Marian University, And then I saw this post for Vagabond Missions that they were going to open a brand new site here.
So what had you done before Vagabond Missions as far as your mission, your pastoral mission?
Yeah, I got called into the working in the church pretty early on. So I was a youth minister at a parish for about 8 years, and then I went to the diocese and then was a coordinator for youth ministry. So I was
out in LA?
Out of Orange County.
Orange County, okay.
Yeah, so I trained youth ministers there for about 8 years.
Okay.
So I became heavily entrenched in youth ministry as a background.
Awesome. So what intrigued you about, now so you're coming to Indianapolis and you don't have a job yet,
Correct.
right? And what about your husband? Did
He didn't have work yet either.
Okay, is he a minister somewhere?
He was a full-time ministry in Orange County, but we transitioned when he got here, and now he works at Chase Bank as a relational banker. So
okay.
A different field, but a really good fit for our family.
That's good.
Yeah.
So what intrigued you about Vagabond? Now we get into what is Vagabond Missions and how you can help and get involved if you're so interested. So tell us about Vagabond. First of all, what intrigued you about Vagabond Missions as opposed to all the other stuff you were looking at?
Yeah, when I was working at the diocese and in the parish, I always saw that there was a gap of young people that the church wasn't able to serve well. And not because of an intention or not because we were purposely excluding young people, but I think those teens that are unchurched, that are still living in our boundaries but not coming into our parish, we weren't successfully ministering well. And that became most apparent to me when I was doing restorative justice. So I was going to juvenile hall, working with young men, doing sacramental prep with them. They would get released and I would try to connect them to the local church, and it just never really settled in. There wasn't a good bridge or pathway for them to integrate into the parish life.
Now, these people that you were counseling, let's, for lack of a better term, were they juvenile criminals or?
Yeah, they had been placed in juvenile hall for
And they probably hadn't been to church at all in their lives, right?
Yeah, or grew up or maybe heard about it, or their grandmother maybe was Catholic. So when we came into juvenile hall and asked if they were interested in receiving sacraments, going to Mass, they were eager and excited to learn more about their faith.
But once you got into the process, it just didn't hold?
Well, once they were able to get out of the facility, they were released and they would go back to the parish, it would be really hard to mainstream in. And so I kind of saw that there was this gap of these young people that really needed extra mentorship, people to really walk with them where they were in their faith journey. And that's really what Vagabond does. We're able to meet young people exactly where they are. It can take as long as it needs to take to bring them into the church.
So,
and we're
okay.
able to be really flexible about what their needs are.
So when was Vagabond Missions founded? Where are they headquartered? And where are they besides Indianapolis? Are they all over the country, or I assume it's growing?
It is growing. We have been around for 15 years, so fairly new nonprofit. We are in 10 different cities. Our headquarters is in Pittsburgh, and we've reached 4,000 teens in that time, and 200 of those have come into the church.
Okay. Have you been able to follow everybody else? Is everybody else living a positive life, or how can you measure that, or is it too hard?
Yeah, I don't know if I can measure everyone, but one of the big indicators for me looking at the success of what Vagabond's model has done is we have several missionaries that were former teens. So not only did they go through the program of Vagabond, they were transformed so much that they themselves wanted to live in
They're doing kind of what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, so Vagabond came to Indianapolis when?
I moved here in June, and the missionaries got here in August. So not that long ago, just about 6-7 months we've been here.
Less than a year.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to take a little while to spread the word, which is probably why you were in Catholic Business Exchange, right? So how did you go about getting connected to the people you're looking for? Are you still working on that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest win for us was getting into the IPS school district.
Okay.
So we were able to connect with them and be a community partner, which allows us to be on campus every week. So we have a steady, consistent presence on the high school campus, which is in the area we serve. We're connected with St. Philip Neri Church. So Father Dufresne there has just been great. He opens up the facilities for us to use. He'll come by and play games with the young people that are there, and really opens us to having a nice home. And that's where our youth center is currently.
At St. Philip Neri. Let's see, what age are we talking about here?
High school youth.
High school kids.
Yeah, we
okay.
do have a few 8th graders at St. Philip Neri because that's a elementary middle school. So we have some of their 8th graders that are coming to our events.
Now, you guys have an office in Indianapolis?
I work from home out of St. Philip Neri. It allows us to use some space as well.
Gotta love them, yeah.
A lot of what we're doing is just on the streets where young people are, in school, on the corners.
Before we go any farther, and before I forget, why don't you give everybody your website and any contact information in case they want to volunteer or find out more?
Yeah. So our website is vagabondmissions.com, and that will give you information about all of the sites nationally that we serve. If you're on Instagram or Facebook, our handle is at Indy Vagabond, and that will give you a little bit more updates on locally what's happening, and you can message me that way, and we'd love to get you involved. We have opportunities to volunteer, to bring meals. We have an Amazon wish list, and then we're also looking for financial monthly partners, and I love to be able to share more about that with you.
Okay, speaking of financial, you guys, you're still very new here. Are you going to, have you done, or are you going to do fundraisers?
Yeah, our model is typically having mission partners, so having intentional conversations with people and having them tithe and become part of the mission. I think moving here to Indianapolis, I would love to host some type of fundraiser to get more people aware of what we do and have a bigger audience to be able to make those personal
But it's too early to tell what that is, whether it's a golf outing or a dinner or whatever.
Right
you don't
now
know yet.
We're speaking at parishes and sharing about the mission and getting second collections and getting phone numbers so I can take people to coffee and really just have that one-on-one personal ask.
So you're in IPS, and that's a great start. Where else are you? You're obviously probably looking to get into in and around churches, right? But let's take the kids that have already fallen off the radar. Maybe they're in a juvenile detention center or whatever. Are you trying to get to that too?
Yeah, there is a juvenile detention center off of Keystone that
Yes.
I've been working on trying to get the background clearance and be able to volunteer in that. So that is something that we hope that we'll be able to.
Still working on that.
Yeah.
And if somebody out there that's watching might be able to help, please give Catherine,
Yes.
A call or email or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Did you give the email?
Oh, my email is Catherine, so that's with the CATHERINEO at vagabondmissions.com. I know it's kind of long.
Yeah. Where'd they get the name Vagabond?
Vagabond. So we take an approach to ministry that's very incarnational, and we try to bring Christ to these young people. And when Christ was here, he was a vagabond. He didn't have a home.
Yeah.
He went place to place
okay.
and wandered. And so our missionaries, when we come and do service, they're living in the same area that we're serving, and they're placed there for 1 to 2 years, and kind of this is their new home. They're wandering, trying to find young people that.
Are you finding? Do you get a lot of resistance from the kids? And talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I've actually been really surprised at how open and excited young people have been to come to our events and our programming. I think there's not a lot of stuff happening on the Near East Side for young people.
Well, that's part of the problem on the Near East Side,
Yeah.
that's for sure. So you're really focusing on the Near
that.
East Side for starters.
That's our
St. Philip
mission
Neri is
site,
there. Yeah, okay.
So we're able to provide transportation. We're able to provide a meal. It's free. It's safe. So, I think the biggest thing is building that relationship so we can ask them and invite them to come. And so that happens, after school, we hand out chips as snacks, and say, hey, this is happening. Are you interested in coming? And then maybe after seeing us for 2 or 3 weeks, they're like, wait, what is that? Like, when is it?
So do they have to come to St. Philip, or do you go to the schools?
So we're at the school on Wednesdays in their whole lunch periods. And then on Mondays after school, we're outside passing out snacks, answering questions. Sometimes we have little games for them to play or ways to interact.
So you mentioned programs. Anything specific, or have you just described the programs so far?
So we are offering 2 to 3 programs a week. So we have a breakout, which is like a youth night, high energy, lots of games, dinner, and then we end it with a message that's usually about 10 minutes focused on Jesus.
And that's at St. Philip?
At St. Philip near, we use their school gym when that's available to us.
I played my first CYO basketball game in that gym in 1959, believe it or not.
It's a great space. Like, it just allows young people, the first half hour when they get there, they can play pickup games, they can hang out, we eat, and then we kind of have a more structured program where they do more intentional getting to know each other games.
How many kids are involved now?
We serve a little over 40.
Okay.
And so we consistently have between 20 and 30 that come to those breakouts.
And they come from different schools?
Most of them are coming from Arsenal Tech. However, if they come from Arsenal Tech, we have a few of them that said, oh, can my brother or my sister or my cousin or my half-sister come? And then we allow them to invite any of their friends. So sometimes they'll be from different schools.
So you've got 40 kids. You're brand new here. You're picking them up one kid at a time, it sounds like,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, so we have a van, and then we figure out who wants to come, and then make the route that makes the most sense and go pick each of them up.
Have you spoken to the people at the Shepherd Center?
I have worked with them a little bit through St. Philip Neri, knowing that kind of the work that they're doing.
Well, there's some similarities there.
Because we're not a wraparound service, so we definitely do work with the other nonprofits.
Yeah, and they're not specifically into the spiritual end of things. They're into the keeping kids off the street end of things, and they do a wonderful job at it.
Yeah.
And I know that's what about that Bonner Youth Center on Michigan? You know that? You know about that?
The Bonner Center is also part of a community partnership with Arsenal Tech. And so all of us nonprofits get to meet monthly to share what we're doing, any announcements, any ways that we can partner with each other, which is really helpful because then we can share that information to the families that we're serving.
In your experience, so now what about the kids that are back to the juvenile? You haven't been able to. The kids that you're dealing with so far in Indianapolis, they haven't been in jail yet.
None of the ones that are currently in ours.
Yeah.
Have been in the
Okay.
system yet.
So, but in the past, at other organizations, you dealt with kids that were in jail, and you definitely want to get to that, right?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, how that gets done. I don't know. Again, anybody out there that would know how to help Catherine and Vagabond get involved at the juvenile center or wherever else these kids might be, that would be a big move for you, I would think.
Yeah, and I think also the kids that we're working with at Arsenal Tech don't have a background of church, so they don't really have a foundation of who Jesus is. They're not currently practicing at any denomination. So I think really we're able to kind of meet kids where they're at and be able to bring some hope into their life. A lot of them are living in cycles of violence and neglect and abuse, so we're able to really ground them in who Jesus is and that message that there's hope in their life.
What about Howe High School? That's in the neighborhood.
Yeah, we're just focusing on Arsenal Tech right now. I think as our team builds and we get more missionaries, then we'll be opening multiple sites.
We're looking for missionaries.
Yes, we do. Always looking for missionaries. If you're interested in that, it's a 2-year commitment, and there's the 10 different cities that we're in. It's a great way to live in community, to learn and grow in your faith, and to really have a lot of fun with young people that are just in so need of having a person that can be Christ to them. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. I'd love to share more about that process.
What's that movie that's out now with Kelsey Grammer? It's about Jesus. I can't think of the name of it, but it's a huge hit.
Yeah.
And I was actually looking for it in the movie theaters and might have already left the movie theaters. I wish I could think of the name of that movie. But Kelsey Grammer, the guy that was in Cheers,
Yeah.
he's produced this movie about Jesus, and I guess, you know, it would be a great thing to show these kids
Yeah.
if you can find it.
Okay.
Okay. You haven't heard about it yet?
I don't know that one, no.
Gosh, I wish I could remember the name of that movie. I'll look it up when we're done with the show.
I know the Chosen series has also been really well at being able to document, you know, the gospel and the story of Jesus in a really compelling, dynamic way.
Have you been able to share that with the kids?
Yeah, so in addition to the breakouts, we also have Bible study.
Okay.
Which is more like faith sharing, but we kind of break open a little bit of scripture. They have a Bible in front of them. They get to open it and turn it and kind of get used to handling Bibles. And then we're able to read it and ask them some questions about that. And at those events, we've also maybe like read a story in the scripture and then watched a scene that correspond to it in the Chosen, so they can kind of see it.
Oh, that's excellent. What's the racial component of your 40 kids?
Yeah, it's pretty diverse. We have a lot of Black African American young people that are coming to our programming, as well as some Hispanic youth, and then we have some Caucasians.
You have some Caucasians?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. St. Philip Neri is predominantly Spanish speaking, but in Arsenal Tech, we're getting a little bit more diversity, so it's a combination.
How are all the kids getting along together?
So far, we've done pretty good at being able to make this a safe place. We have expectations, and because the missionaries are able to be so welcoming and really be able to walk with these young people, we're not seeing a lot of fighting. Not to say that there isn't ever arguments, but they do really take ownership of the space.
Well, obviously, they're all there kind of for the same reason.
Yeah.
That really helps, right? And I know that that's not always the case out in the real world. So, gosh, I wish you had 500 kids already. But you
with
know,
more missionaries.
More missionaries. How many missionaries do you have now?
So our team there's 3 of us. So I have Sienna and Joe. So 1 female, 1 male, and then myself.
So did you have nobody when you got here and you picked up Sienna and Joe?
Yeah,
right?
in August they
Okay,
came, yeah.
well, that's progress.
Yeah.
That's progress. So how are you and your husband and kids? Where do your kids go to school?
They're at White Lake Elementary in Brownsburg.
Oh, you live in Brownsburg?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And how are you liking it here?
I love it. It has been a really good change of pace, and just everyone here in Indianapolis is so friendly and helpful, and that's just been great. I know my neighbors have kids that are our same age, so our kids play at each other's houses. So yeah, it's been a good fit.
So back to your choosing Indianapolis as opposed to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. Did the idea of Midwestern or Hoosier hospitality play into that?
I mean, there was some of that. There was, the cost of living, schools,
yes.
hospitals, the diversity, small but yet big. And then really when I found out Vagabond was opening a site, it made sense. It was like, all of this time I've said that I want to serve all young people, but I've missed this huge gap. And it became a point where I couldn't continue to ignore that population. I really needed to do
that's your sweet
sweet
spot, and your kids are growing into that spot too,
mm-hmm.
right? So you go to church at St. Malachy?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful facility.
Yeah.
I can remember the old St. Malachy. I've got grandkids, and I would go to all their sporting events, and the old St. Malachy was kind of landlocked, right?
Yeah.
And the new St. Malachy is beautiful. Mm-hmm. Would you send your kids to St. Malachy?
I don't know. We've always done public school with our kids. I think it's been good for them to be able to witness their faith in that kind of space. But I don't know, maybe the Lord will be nudging us in a different direction. It wasn't ever possible in Orange County as far as cost. So I don't know if we've really discerned it outside of that.
Haven't quite figured that one out yet, right?
But we're happy with White Lake, and it's been good. And I love that my children, when they write about themselves and they have little posters, they talk about God and that's on the wall and everyone gets to see
Boy,
it.
that's all. It sounds like you and your husband are doing a great job. How's he like working for Chase?
It has been a really good fit, and I didn't realize how much of life is surrounded around a bank. Someone dies, someone gets married. I mean, your money is connected in so many ways, so I think he gets to to minister on some sense with people when they're coming to these big life transitions. As a relational banker, his job is really to connect with them and help, them in the route that they need to go best.
That's an
financially.
interesting transition from being ministerial to being a banker.
Yeah.
Right? It might take some effort, but it sounds like he's doing just fine with that. Any final words?
I just want to end with a quick story. The other night, I was going to bed trying to get my youngest to bed. He's 5, and he was just, being crazy. And he finally got a drink of water, came into bed, and he snuggled me close, and he said, "Can you feel that?" And I said, "Oh, I feel your love." He's like, "Yeah, Mom, that's what God feels like."
Awesome.
And for me, that's what I'm trying to have these young people. I want them to have that experience of what God feels like, to be loved, to be seen, and to be known. And that's what Vagabond does. It helps young people.
Give them the contact information one more time. We need missionaries.
Yes, missionaries, mission partners, any way that you can support and join us, that would be great. So we're at Indy Vagabond. So that's on Facebook and Instagram. My email is CatherineO@vagabondmissions.com. And I would just love to be able to meet with you and to share with you and invite you into this mission.
Better spell Catherine again.
Okay, Catherine is CATHERINE, and that's O, and then at vagabondmissions.com.
Catherine Ord, Vagabond Missions. Thanks for coming on to Indy's Trusted Servant Show.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Next week, we'll be hosting Jennifer Stansfield, who is the incoming Rotary District Governor. And Ryan Henry, the InspireSmall.biz guy, and I are big-time Rotarians. Ryan's bigger time than I am. He's going to be a district governor someday. So we'll see you next week with Jennifer Stansfield, incoming district governor of Rotary. And she's from where, Ryan?
Crawfordsville.
Crawfordsville, Indiana. See you then.